Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts. Download our podcast immediately following this live stream on all major podcasting apps. You can go to roguewavepodcast.com. That's wave without an E to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Join the movement. Go rogue, roguematter.com. As always, I am your host, Michael Dolce, joined by my cohort in crime, Mr. Lord of the Radio himself, Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
Great. Everything is wonderful.
You almost didn't make it. Didn't make it.
I got my medical tag right there.
And before we get into why you didn't make it, I want to welcome our guest who is here to on short notice to prop up in case you didn't make it.
In case I didn't make it.
Mr. Darren Sanchez, how you doing,
with him.
sir?
How you doing, guys? Rush off the bench to replace the injured Hassan Godwin.
He got the call.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you were having some, not feeling too well yesterday, so we were unsure if you were going to make it. And ironically, before you got on, onto the broadcast, Darren and I were like, I don't think he made it. And Darren's like, no, don't say that. I don't think he made the podcast.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he made the podcast.
Hassan's probably going to make it. What do you mean?
So I'm like, oh yeah, just I didn't do it. All right, let's do the podcast now.
Yeah.
Son's dead. Did you watch Captain America last week? Did you see?
I will say this. First of all, there's two great things. I'm not going to get too graphic. There's one like really awesome thing. I haven't been in an emergency room in a long time, right? And so they put like the IV thing in with the 3 prongs that come out so that they can. So when the last time I was actually in the emergency room, every time they wanted to do something, it was a separate needle, right? It was a separate, they had to draw blood, So this nurse, she's Russian, and she was taking vial after vial after vial of blood, right? And so I'm sitting there, and she's just doing it very casually. There's no pain, and I go, I'm gonna get all that back, right? And she stops and she stares at me, and I'm like, I'm kidding. She goes, oh, and then she goes back to I'm like, okay. I'm not joking with these people. These people are wired
They've way too tight. They've been through a lot in the last year, so
exactly.
Probably
they don't need my humor. I'm just gonna hang back. God knows what could happen, so I'm just gonna chill out. So
we
nice people. They were all nice, but they were dry. They were not into amateur theatrics from a patient who thinks he's cleverer than he is. So I just got over that really quickly.
Well, we were happy that you are well enough to attend the podcast. And
we'll see. We'll see. Darren's going to do a lot of talking.
This is very true. We've got a great show, though, and we got a lot to talk about. And Darren, your credentials, obviously, you're at Marvel Comics. You're part of the creative, the custom comics division. So we'll definitely want to talk to you a little bit about that Marvel deal that happened. We'll do that a little later in the show. We're actually going to do a little preview of the new podcast that Rogue Matter is debuting on Sunday night right here on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts. It's called Wednesday Forever. It's like the toys that made us, but with comics. We talk about all the comics that kind of influenced us as a generation, and we try to bring the creators in who worked on those comics to talk about it. So episode 1 is X-Force #1 featuring Fabian Nicieza. So we'll run a clip of that a little later as well too. Fabian's always a great conversation to be had, but we're going to start and pretty much focus on Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 4. We're going to do a little reaction, a little recap, and we're going to look ahead to episode 5. It has finally, now Darren, you may or may not have listened to the last couple episodes, but I have not been very high on this podcast, on this show, on the podcast. I thought the first 2 episodes it was grueling to get through. I thought the main characters were very, for their show, they were the least interesting. Then Baron Zemo, in a ridiculous fashion, gets let out of jail, and the show gets fun. Episode 3 was fun, and episode 4, believe it or not, it has finally gotten to a point where I'm like, wow, I'm excited to see what happens. So, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen episode 4. John
And
Walker.
I kind of said that was going to happen because it's all one story that's broken up into a bunch of episodes. So maybe not judge it until it's all done.
Hang
on.
on.
I said that a number of times.
Hang on. John Walker takes the super soldier serum, and he ends up in front of everybody, disgracing the Shield by murdering the murderer of his friend Battlestar. So again, I did say spoilers if you hadn't seen it.
Actually, that guy didn't murder Battlestar.
Right, that guy didn't. Right, he was quote unquote. He was an accumplice too.
Yes,
the group. So. But
his last words were something like, "It wasn't me."
Wah wah. Killed by the Shield.
Yeah. Well,
this is the conversation that I was having though, right? Yes, in a roundabout way. Now the show has gotten interesting, and I'm very excited for it. However, a show where there's two main characters are still the least interesting. How successful a show or a story is that when your main characters, honestly, they don't even need to be there, right?
They're the least interesting to you. You keep leaving that aspect out.
No, I make that abundantly clear that they are universally the least interesting characters.
Okay, I got you.
Well, let me ask you, Darren, are they? Is my opinion claim accurate to you?
Actually, yeah, I think so. It's something that really didn't occur to me because I kind of see Marvel movies now as a not really focusing on any one character. It's like even, Captain America, Civil War. It wasn't really about Cap as much as it was about Iron Man and about a dozen other people. So it's every Marvel comic that you open is really about the world, and maybe you have a perspective of from Falcon or Winter Soldier. But yeah, these characters, they used to be interesting. They're not interesting anymore. Like Winter Soldier used to be an assassin and controlled by Hydra, and he was conflicted, and now he's just a boring good guy who is trying to get dates and stuff like that. Falcon, he's another one who's basically pure-hearted. He's not going to do anything evil. He's by the book. So how are you going to do a show about two guys like that who don't do anything bad anymore? They're not as interesting as they could be. So you introduce John Walker. And right away, he looked kind of goofy in his cowl, I think. But after a while, you get used to it. And I think he's a flawed character, and he's a lot more interesting to me. In fact, the only real reason that I think people are interested in it is because the whole Captain America's lore is hanging over the show. Like, who's going to take on the new Cap mantle and that sort of thing. And Cap's not even in the show. So something has to be interesting. The conflict, I think, with John Walker is probably more interesting than anything. And then Baron Zemo, seeing him dance, it's kind of wacky. The whole Baron Zemo thing. He's got more personality than Baron Zemo really deserves to have.
It's amazing, right? and you use the word right, personality, right? And that's where Falcon, I put him above Bucky in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of like characters I'm most interested in, because at least he has that storyline with his sister and things like that. I mean, Bucky has gotten more one-dimensional in this entire series than he has been in any other previous appearance to me. And Falcon's more interesting, but because they keep sticking him in this, like, I think undeserved married couple relationship with Bucky, which I never really got, because it's like, well, they kind of knew each other and they were kind of friends at the end of Endgame, but they were kind of united. I know he gave up the shield, but
find that better. Why are they together?
Yeah.
In fact, maybe even have them voice it. Why do I hang out with you? Something like that, because there are people wondering that kind of thing. You don't see Iron Man hanging out with Ant-Man all the time. It just it needs to be explained, I think.
Yeah. So those two characters are the least interesting. So again, I go back and I circle back to the point. The show has gotten really interesting, and I like your point that it's about the world. But doesn't that kind of bleed in? And Hassan, I know you're on the DL right now, or the IL, sorry, the injured list. But doesn't that kind of bleed into your point that maybe this show is only interesting because it's setting up the rest of the world now, and that's something that
I don't know. I don't know why we have to do postmortem on every episode as to like the what the spark point of the episode is. Either you want to watch it or you don't.
I do want to watch it.
I don't think it's a clarion call or something like that for the decline of anything. I think it's fine. I think I'm waiting for the wrap up to find out whether or not it was a good experience or not. But I do understand the nature of the medium. I do understand that we're not getting complete stories because it is a 6-hour story. It's not 6 episodes. It's 6 hours. So it is what it is. I think if it all came down at once and then you watched it and then around hour 4 you got to that and then you were able to go straight into hour 5 and 6, you'd probably, the last 3 hours would probably, justify the first 3 hours theoretically. And then you wouldn't have any.
Probably. If the first 3 hours aren't good, then only about 50% of your audience is going to see the last 3 hours.
Well,
so
I'm not
ability to be something. Game of Thrones was better in the beginning than it was in the end. I mean, you have to deliver every episode. You don't have to deliver a full story and answer every question. You don't want to see Spider-Man's origin every time you see Spider-Man. You just want a good story, with good personalities, things that make sense. Breaking Zemo out of jail, you kind of let that one go just to see where it goes. He's got personality, sure. But his character is more like Loki, I think, than it is like Baron Zemo, like the one that we know. Because you're questioning, is he good? He seems good, and that kind of thing. And in fact, that actor probably could play Loki. I don't know his name, or I would give him credit because
Daniel Bruhl.
He's Bruhl. So, but I mean, I think every show has to deliver a little something. Mike, you said that the show it started off terrible, and that I thought the first episode it started off better than it was like more of a James Bond opening than any James Bond movie.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm not one of the people who think that the first 3 hours are bad. I'm just saying.
I like the opening action sequence.
Yes.
The inciting incident.
There were parts.
And then after that, I was kind of like, whoa.
In both, actually, the first 3 episodes where I literally lost track of about 20 minutes of my life because I was kind of dozing in and out of paying attention. I think that there are really slow parts in it. And to have such a simple plot that you're tracking down the super soldier serum, and you're doing that for 6 episodes, there's got to be other stuff in there, and I feel like there's too much slow pacing, and they're trying to get really clever, and instead of just worrying about the story, instead of worrying about the next 5 movies that they're setting up so much as let's make this one worthwhile. They might be trying to do too much, kind of like WandaVision in a way, where for those people who stuck around till the end, because it was just too weird for a lot of mainstream people, opening up, especially younger mainstream people who'd never seen Mary Tyler Moore or Bewitched. They had no idea what the hell was going on. So they stuck around for the same reason people are sticking around for this, and the same reason people went to watch Captain Marvel, because they want the whole thing. They don't want to be lost when the next chapter comes out, because it's all interconnected. And so they're making a continuity spider web of things that they have to keep track of every time they make even a 40-minute story. So,
now, it's interesting you bring that up too, and I brought up this on earlier in this segment too, is that was one of his rogue rages. And I think rightfully so, right? Is that there is too much emphasis on, take WandaVision, for example. People were pissed because it didn't set up the next 5 movies, right? It didn't bring the X-Men universe in. It didn't bring Mephisto in. It didn't bring in all these things that they had speculated, and the fan speculation turned on it.
Yeah.
Do you see that as something, that is also kind of a detriment to these kind of endeavors, the TV shows and things like that, where the fan speculation is dooming some of the collective enjoyment?
Absolutely. Game of Thrones may be the best example. WandaVision is another example of here's how this character's arc should have ended, that kind of stuff. And who's to say how it should have ended? If you're the writer, nobody could tell you how something should end,
Kevin Feige can.
Well, he's the visionary. So if he decides that's how it ends, then it's officially how it ends. So you could be disappointed, but you can't say they did it wrong. Essentially, creativity is just that. It's your story, I can't read The Sire and tell you, man, you did that ending all wrong. The character would
I did, though. It was terrible. I just did it. It was a terrible ending. I gotta retcon that.
But yeah, these shows are fun. Speculating is fun, but it is just that, it's speculation. So when you're wrong, maybe they missed an opportunity, and that's the most you can say. But you can't say they did it wrong. You could say, I would have done it differently, or I wish they had done it differently. But I guarantee you, introducing the X-Men is something they're going to do well whenever they decide to do it. And WandaVision probably was too small a stage for that, though they did tease at it to their eventual detriment. But they played around with teasing at it, but all these shows just made it seem like, well, they have to do it, whereas the show is a failure. So they're just being playful, and they're going to release X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that other stuff. And it's going to be epic. It's not going to be on some 40-minute Disney Plus, 6th episode of a 9-episode series kind of thing. It's going to be bigger. So
I love Inside Baseball. What was the Office like during WandaVision? Because I thoroughly enjoyed WandaVision. I thought WandaVision was fantastic, and not because I was hoping. I loved the fact that they kind of teased at the X-Men stuff, and then I was okay with the joke. By the end of it as well too. I thought it told a really good story, and I think it told a better story about the main characters than what Falcon and Winter Soldier are doing. But what was like the Office like during WandaVision?
Well, it looked a lot like what you see on the screen here, because I've been working from home for over a year. But in Zoom calls with the group, we're chatting through. Disney uses Slack, so we chat through Slack on the side, and in the morning it would be 9 a.m. I'd get a message from one of my coworkers saying, did you watch the latest WandaVision? I'm like, no, not yet, but I'll be able to talk about it, tomorrow, or I'll watch it at lunch, and we'll talk. It was the talk of the Office,
the virtual office,
like the 3 or 4 minutes before a Zoom call actually starts, when everybody's saying hey and showing up. That's what they're talking about, is that it's the water cooler of the current pandemic. So that's we enjoyed it. I liked it. I actually have a soft spot in my heart for like the Andy Griffith Show and Mary Tyler Moore and
Bewitched,
the Brady Bunch and Bewitched and all that kind of stuff. Though I always preferred I Dream of Jeannie, but that sort of thing to me was clever, maybe a little too clever at times. I love Catherine Hahn. She's amazing. Before the Agatha Harkness role, I just think she's great. So yeah, I enjoyed WandaVision, and I got a new appreciation for Elizabeth Olsen, because I don't think she really shone. Is that the right word? Shone in the Avengers movies. She was like a bit part in a periphery character.
Yeah.
And even as an actress, she didn't particularly stand out. I think she's head and shoulders more likable than Brie Olson. and I just
Brie Larson.
Brie
Larson.
Okay, Brie
Yeah.
Larson.
Brie Larson, yeah.
So she's definitely much more likable. So it's I just think it was a good opportunity for her to be spotlight, and she really kind of stole the show.
Yeah, we were fans of that. We definitely enjoyed the show, and I enjoyed it from the get-go, and I also enjoyed the main characters. I enjoyed the speculating, and as much as I understand that people will be disappointed by it, I think that's part of the fun. So in that vein,
Exactly.
let's do predictions sure to go wrong for the next 2 episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Hassan, this is your favorite segment. This is your favorite thing. What's that?
Just as a disclaimer, I have no knowledge of
Oh,
where
yeah,
anything's going. I don't work for studios. I'm in the comic part, so we don't know anything. So my speculation is as good as yours and anybody else's. So there you go.
It might even be better because Hassan hates speculating.
I mean,
Usually I'd be like, what do you think's going to happen? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you think's going to happen? I don't know. And then I'm like, well, there's a lot of dead air here now. So what do we do here?
Well, like if I do an entire segment on speculation and how I think that's destroying the genre, and then you ask me to speculate, you're actually asking me to contradict myself, which
I'm asking you to have fun with it, though.
I don't find it fun.
What would you do if you were the showrunner? That might be a better way to phrase it. From what they've set up, where would you take it?
That's very different than what.
Yeah, but then I don't get the squirmy answer from Hassan, so I don't know.
So then what's the goal then? It's not the goal is not the segment. The goal is just to piss me off.
Then it usually leads into the rogue rage. So it's pretty good actually. Today's rogue rage: why Mike pissed me off again.
Why the prequels suck and Led Zeppelin is terrible.
And
all right, here we go.
You
know what? Here's the good part, though, right? As much as I kid Hassan. I'm not trying to make you squirm. I do like that. If you were the showrunner,
you could do it today though, because I'm in shaky condition.
No. You see that I'm actually typing this down. If you were the showrunner, there you go. We're gonna name this segment instead of predictions sure to go wrong. We're gonna name it If You Were the Showrunner.
And we got to tell Hassan to quit belly aching.
Well, I like what he did there. See that? That's why we have you on as our go-to sub.
years ago, we were doing the one of the Wizard shows, and there was a mob of people. There was probably like 50 people coming at me, to go do something. And I was like, Darren, I need help over here. I need people. And Darren's like, I'll be there in a minute. Right. And in the same voice he's using right now, that same level of urgency. Right. And so and now it was like 75 people, and they were all like aching to get into whatever partition I had closed off. And I was like, hey, Darren, whenever you got a moment. And Darren was like, keep your shirt on. It was the loudest I ever heard him say. And you know what happened? I stopped asking him for help. He showed up 5 minutes after that with his brother, and suddenly everybody dispersed. Well,
his brother it was a cop, so it helped, right?
Yeah.
All right. If you were the showrunner, I'll throw it back and forth between the two of you. Actually, this is good. Will we get a flashback of Isaiah Bradley fighting Bucky in Korea?
That is still a question poised as a prediction. If you were the showrunner, would you have?
Yes.
Would you have? No, not will we have. Would you include? That's
all right. Would you get?
If you want to keep the illusion going.
Okay. Would you include a flashback of Isaiah Bradley fighting Bucky back in Korea?
Personally, I would not, but I would show them fighting now. I think Isaiah Bradley still has a lot left in the tank, and when you look at him, he looks like an MMA fighter who's just an older guy now, but he still looks like a badass. And Bucky for in this show, I don't know what's going on, but Bucky right now does not look like the Cap equivalent. He definitely does not. The Dora
Well,
Milaje.
he fell out of the plane. That's why.
The Dora Milaje basically kicked his ass, and Falcons too, and so I feel like these characters are either underpowered right now, or they're pale comparisons to what Cap was, and so yeah, I think that
Yeah, and Bucky went toe to toe with Cap in Winter Soldier,
Right.
So he was a legitimate threat in Winter Soldier, and now he theoretically
Dark Side Bucky, right?
Yeah, theoretically he's holding back. He's still probably afraid of himself, but that again is a speculation. That's not, and it's not an excuse. It's just a possibility.
Right.
But if they don't tell us, it's not a legitimate reason.
not like Palpatine against Mace Windu, but I digress. I think he probably is holding back a little, because you're not fighting a villain when you're fighting Dora Milaje.
Yeah.
And you're not fighting for your life. She's not going to kill you. It's
I feel like she came pretty darn close a couple times there.
yeah.
But she's kind of I don't know if she's into him romantically, but she's into him she's invested in him because she helped him.
Right.
So she wasn't trying to shut him down either. She was trying to get him out of the way, but she wasn't trying to put him out of his misery.
It seems the implication, and we might be getting off track, Mike, but it seems the implication was that
this whole podcast is off track. Like, that's the whole basis of our podcast is to get off track.
A better fighter than him, almost like that's his sensei or something, and he's powerless to stop her, which I didn't particularly like. The show is called Falcon and Winter Soldier, and they were never shown to be better fighters than Captain America. Maybe 2 or 3 of them could take him down, but to just be that dominant, I thought that was a little bit a stretch for me. So,
well, in that vein, Hassan, if you were the showrunner, would we see more Dora Milaje and even Danny Guerrera maybe making an appearance?
No. I mean, the show's already weighted down with a lot of people and a lot of threads to keep going left, right, and center. So I would tighten up what we already have, and I do agree with you. At the one point, I would make it move a little faster than it is, and I would have there be definitive, holy crap moments at the very end of each episode, and I would have done that starting from the first episode. So I wouldn't have given you, like, if I was running it, I definitely would have given you a big action sequence at the beginning to get everybody invested, but I would have ended it on a cliffhanger. I wouldn't have ended it on some kind of strange cathartic, what room is there in the world for superheroes when the war's over, kind of situation. I would have had that aspect in there, but then I would have had something else happen. So I mean, the second episode on, they had the fight with the super soldiers and the new Captain America. I mean, the end of the first episode, they did show the new Captain America, but that's not really an oh crap moment. That's just like all right, we kind of told you we were going to do one thing and we did something else, but maybe that guy's a great guy, so that you don't necessarily know that that's a negative, right? That they didn't set that up as a negative, so that's not like technically a cliffhanger. The next episode is just them walking down the road after they got their butts kicked by the super soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it was a fun fight.
Yeah,
that kind of fighting on top of a moving vehicle and all the surprise element of the what they thought was the hostage is actually the badass. A good
I have no complaint about the action sequences at all.
I'm just bringing it up as another example of the first few episodes not being terrible. That's all.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're terrible. I'm just speaking to Michael's concerns about it. I think if I was in the writing room with him and he'd voiced those concerns, then one of the things I would have done I would have stepped up the investment mechanism at the end of every episode. I would have had there be a definite, this is bad kind of situation at the end of every episode. Because even at the end of the second episode, they just said, okay, we're going to go see Zemo. And if you don't know who Zemo is,
it's just, and then they went here, and then they went there.
Yeah.
And they went here. And which is, kind of a cardinal sin in anything that's episodic. You got to either wrap it up or cliffhanger it. And they're kind of just leaving you hanging, which is a weird feeling. You almost want to watch the credits to see if something else is going to pop up at the end to kind of give you that needed, jolt.
I'll tell you what I would have done. Definitely. I would have had Zemo break out on his own at the end of the second episode. And I would have had them go after him to try to get him. And in the process of that, he explains to them what the circumstance is. So they end up grudgingly working with him. They're keeping him in their custody, but they're grudgingly working with him. That way you eliminate the weird,
and they can fight to a standoff and then talk as they're like standing off, and then they just, why didn't you say so? And then just have a little humor in there.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And you take out the why did they break him out of prison, aspect of it, even though technically Falcon didn't. Winter Soldier did, and Winter Soldier is kind of a free agent at this point. He tagged along with Sam on his own. Like he's, I'm coming with you. And Sam's like, no, you're not. And he just followed him onto the plane, which is why Sam didn't even give him a parachute when he jumped out of the plane. So, Winter Soldier is along for the ride, and then later you find out that he's invested in Sam, basically because Sam is probably his only connection to any kind of reality because Steve Rogers is gone, theoretically gone. He's not dead, but he's not on the active players list, as you say, Michael. So I would have taken that out. I would have had him break out. That would have been your holy crap moment at the end of the second episode. The third episode would have been them tracking him down and then him convincing them that they need to work together to get to the bottom of all this, and then proceed on. And that's probably what I would have done. What I will do, would I put an Isaiah, a Winter Soldier flashback? I might. I don't know if that would be a good idea or not, but it's really tempting.
Casting another actor as a young Isaiah and all that sort of stuff. And
I'd make Disney spend the money and do the youth thing on Carl Lumbly.
Well, they upped the price of the service recently, so that's got to go somewhere, right? It's got to go to somebody's pocket. J.
There. White,
All right, I'll throw this out here. Would you bring Torres back and give him powers to somehow combat all of this? Torres was
the kind
of
sort of
which we have not seen. We had not seen since the beginning.
No, because it's like I said, there's too many pieces on the board right now that they're trying to shuffle around. It's like the Game of Thrones. Too
many stories going on, and actually, honestly, too many stories and not enough conflict. It's just how's he doing? Oh, same old, and there's not a lot of turmoil going on, or there's physical conflicts, but there's not a lot of the kind of conflict that you need to drive a story forward for Falcon or Winter Soldier, honestly, other than the
show should just be called Zemo.
Other than it should be called the Chase for the Serum or something like that. That's all it's about. And because it could really be anybody so far. When you write a Spider-Man story, you got to do it in a way that it's uniquely solved in a Spider-Man kind of way. When they're writing this story, to me, there is no unique way that Falcon or Winter Soldier operates because they're kind of generic versions of.
Well, they're like Steve. They just punch their way to the end of it. Right? Steve
not,
Rogers doesn't investigate.
Genius detectives or James Bond using gadgets, or any kind of thing like that. They don't have a thing. and it's a little tough to make it uniquely feel like them. It just feels like another part of an event. Even the aesthetic looks like another Avengers movie. It doesn't have a different color scheme or style or even the scripts still feel the same. They're not like I don't know. They still have the same kind of humor, almost like a sitcom with the same serious joke, and it feels
the Whedonisms
a little formulaic. That it should have some kind of uniqueness. Something about WandaVision had that. This to me doesn't.
I like that Darren is making all the points that I've made over the previous podcasts, but Hassan's like, yes, Darren, just go on. Very, very interesting.
I haven't changed my position. If you had presented your argument as well as Darren, I'd probably be agreeing with you. But you're usually a douche about it, So there's the point right there.
Keep your shirt on, man. All right?
Yeah. Don't make me laugh.
What do you guys think? What if you were the showrunner? How would you have done this? Comment in the Facebook feed. We will always comment back at you during the show and even afterwards. And when we come back, we're going to do a preview of the very new Rogue Matter podcast called Wednesday Forever. We talk X-Force #1 with Fabian Nicieza when we come back.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Just a reminder, we're going to have the Button Smash guys on in 2 weeks. They are celebrating
with those guys, man.
May the 4th.
I don't want to have those guys
in style, but they're going to tell you all about what they're doing. So April 28th, Rogue Wave, they'll be on and they'll be talking all about it.
I'm going to be sick that show.
I'm just rolling through like a steamroll.
I'm just trying to mess with you.
In new Rogue Matter podcast news, we have a new podcast. So we had Content and Consequences, which wrapped up its first season. You can go check out all of the downloads. Go to Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher. We're basically everywhere podcasts can be downloaded. Go check out that show. And a new show is debuting. It's Wednesday Forever, and it's hosted by yours truly and Victor Dandridge, the busiest man in comics. Awesome dude. You would know him not just from his comic book work, but his moderation work back when Comic Cons were a thing before the pandemic, and will be again. He was Wizard World's go-to moderator, and not just Wizard World. He moderated a ton of different shows. I think he did Motor City as well too. So it's a great co-host, good friend of mine. And Wednesday Forever is a look back on the iconic comic books that inspired a generation. We bring creators involved in those issues to give a real behind-the-scenes look at the work in question, the process of creation, and the story of how it got made. And our debut episode, we welcome friend of the show, writer of X-Force #1, Fabian Nicieza, to give us the details of working on one of the best-selling comics of all time, why the scripts got meaner as they went along, and the struggles with working with an artist who was also building his own company at the same time, and the internal struggle within the X office, transitioning from one generation of writers in Chris Claremont and Louis Simonson to the next generation of image creators, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, etc. Here is an exclusive sneak peek. Take me back. My other question was take me back to when the X-Men books themselves, because it's great. You do have this like internal knowledge as well too. We're all being reshuffled. New Mutants was going to be canceled and turned into X-Force. The second X-Men book was being relaunched. Take me back to the year leading up to that. I mean, what was the excitement level in the offices? You guys were actually behind the scenes creating this stuff.
There was it was a very weird year the year leading up to Jim and Rob, quote unquote, taking over the books. It was a very weird year because there was an absolute partisanship within people in the office, between those who wanted to be loyal to Chris and Louise, and those who felt that not only does the editor have the right to make changes if the editor wants to, but after X amount of years, no pun intended, a change may not necessarily be a bad thing.
Right.
Okay. So in publishing monthly comics and the longevity that some creative people had on titles back then as opposed to now, there's never an easy answer. It's almost like a baseball player. When's it time to retire? Right. There's never an easy answer as to when that is. The key to all of it is thinking about it and planning in advance for it, and communicating with your creators about it. And in that capacity is where we all stumble to one degree or another. Okay. Yeah. I can criticize a lot of the things Bob did wrong back then. Bob Harris was the editor, and I can praise a lot of the things I think he did right. And I can also, with the same breath, say we've all done the wrong and the right things ourselves. So it's something that is.
No one's perfect.
No one's perfect, and there's
Social
levels.
Media lies to me. Go ahead.
There's levels of imperfection, and there's frustrations, different frustrations that can be born from those imperfections. So the transition, having Chris and Louise leave is in essence was the ultimate transition from the Chris, Louise, and Nocenti as editor troika on that title that ran through the totality of the late 70s into the 80s. Yeah. And the transition into the books becoming more forcefully testosterone-y, and much more willing to appeal to a younger reader. Yeah. And that was an understanding choice on Bob's part. He understood that the audience for his titles were starting to age up, and he didn't want all of those readers to be going to Spider-Man because of Todd McFarlane's cool art, or to be going to something else. He wanted new readers to be coming into his fold. There's also enough rumblings and development for an X-Men cartoon in the works that there's an understanding that we're going to get a lot of young people curious about the books as a result of that. So it wasn't a matter of worrying about continuity, which was already completely convoluted anyway, because we only convoluted it even more ourselves. And contrary to all the critics nowadays, and even some of the critics back then, the numbing morass of continuity in the X books did not deter a single 10-year-old or 11-year-old
not at all
from buying the books.
Oh my God. Can I tell you, that was one of the things that brought me into it, because it was buying a snack but getting a meal out of the whole thing, because you just had so much to feed off of. So yeah, I think the only ones back then and the only ones today who complain about that are the ones who are not reading it through 10-year-old eyes or 12-year-old eyes. They're reading it through 40-year-old eyes or 35-year-old eyes. And some of them have never read it before. So it's almost the same thing with soap operas, where people complain, how do you get into soap operas? It's impossible. People are getting into soap operas on a cyclical basis constantly throughout decades of them being broadcast. So anyway, there was division, guys, in the office. There was uncertainty in the office. These were the top selling books. The editor wanted to take the top selling books to an even higher level. Right. And he didn't think that the current creative people he had were going to be able to do that. The sales, although they were the top selling books, the sales had plateaued, and he wanted them to be greater.
And that was our exclusive sneak peek. It's going to stream live 8 p.m. Sunday nights. We've got 8 episodes. We've got a roster of great names for our shows for this first season. It's our inaugural season. We got Fabian in episode 1. Tim Seeley is going to be breaking down Hack Slash #1. Kari Andrews gives a play-by-play on Spider-Man Reign. We talk about lots of stuff. He talks about the one thing in Spider-Man Reign that he still gets Googled about, which is phenomenal, and it's definitely something worthwhile. We've got David Wohl and Renee Geerlings, the writer-editor team behind Witchblade #1. So we break down Witchblade #1. We've got Superman Godfall artist Talon Caldwell to kind of talk about the Mike Turner years when Mike Turner and Talon got to work on the DC properties. Victor and I break down our most influential comics. And finally, Daryl Banks, the artist of Emerald Twilight, Green Lantern #50, which with the controversial Women in Fridge, we dive into all that stuff. We go behind the scenes of that as well. So we've got an awesome first season planned. We hope you enjoy it. And again, debuts this Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right on Facebook. And then you can download the podcast in a number of different places. We do this periodically now, not every week, but we bring you the behind the scenes stuff that's happening in comics that's going to make their way to comics, that's going to make their way to TV and film. We call this segment Spinning the Racks.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
Right.
All right. The Eisners announced their Hall of Fame inductees. There are 6 inductees that are just automatically voted on by the Council of famous cartoonists through the years, people who've contributed to the art form. Alberto Breccia, best known for drawing Mort Cinder. Stan Goldberg, known for his Archie and Marvel color work. Lily Renee Phillips, best known for her work at Fiction House. Francois Moulet, the founder of Raw Books and Toon Books, as well as the art director for The New Yorker. Rodolphe Topfer, pioneering picture stories in the early 1800s, preceded today's comic book strips. And then finally, editorial cartoonist Thomas Nast. So we are bringing highbrow culture to a lowbrow podcast by announcing these 6 pioneers in the work of cartooning. But then meanwhile, the Eisner Awards have also announced 16 nominees. They include Ruth Atkinson, Dave Cochran of X-Men fame, Kevin Eastman, Neil Gaiman, Max Gaines, Justin Green, Moto Hagio, Don Heck, Klaus Janson, Jeffrey Catherine Jones, Hank Ketchum, Scott McCloud, Grant Morrison, Alex Nino, and Pete Craig Russell and Gasper Saladino. Saladino are the 16 nominees. Definitely some household names on that list. Anybody catch your ear, guys, when I was reading off those nominees as like locks? No?
Neil Gaiman, maybe.
Yeah.
There's some great names on there. A few I'd never heard of, to be honest. But honestly, those kinds of things are they're subjective. You know, it depends on what they're looking for. It's like when you pick the MVP of the NBA. Are you looking for the best player on the best team?
Hassan does not know sports, so we
I'm just
That
saying,
is not true.
the criteria are not clearly defined. It's just if it's just general greatness, then there are several locks definitely on that list. Grant Morrison, you know, so
Scott McCloud, Kevin Eastman, that you know.
You know, when I think of Scott McCloud, all I think is that how to make comics book.
But that's huge. That's actually huge.
That's not storytelling. That's
not.
There's so maybe him if he did anything else, you know, I don't know it.
Was it Zot?
That's a contribution to the comic book genre, but that's not a, you know, that's not narrative contribution. You know,
right. So yeah, I think some of the ones where you can definitely think up some excellent stories that were told, like master class level stories were written. Those are the ones I would say are locked.
I like Klaus Janson too. I like his inking and his artwork. Klaus is good. We've been talking the last couple. Wait, before we jump off San Diego, were you as bummed as I was to hear that they're doing a Thanksgiving weekend?
Bummed or indifferent? Is it?
I was bummed. I was planning to go. I want to get out of my house, man. I was like, all right, San Diego in the wintertime. I'm down. Thanksgiving.
Half the country is like, yeah, I would like to go, and the other half is no way I'm going to that. You know, it was in a regular year. It's a petri dish of nastiness. So go now.
Super spreader event.
Yeah, unless you're going to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks after you go, I don't think even companies would say no, thank you. So it would have been hard to logistically pull off if half the people who are normally there, as exhibitors don't want to show up, and then the fans, you could probably fill that place up if you really wanted to, but they would probably have some kind of restriction on that too, and maybe end up getting.
I'm just bummed.
down.
I really wanted to go to San Diego in November. I heard 3-day show in November, smaller show. Sign me up. And then I was like, Thanksgiving weekend.
It'll be better next year. Next year, man.
I
mean, I know, I get it, but I mean, it'll be better next year. It'll be safer. Everybody will be into it. Like there won't be people like cautiously coming in, and you probably won't get a lot of these. Like everybody you're gonna get now are gonna be like these kind of anti-masker types. Like it doesn't even exist. There's no reason to be cautious about anything. So you don't really want to deal with a lot of those.
I just wanted to go to San Diego.
You can still go to San Diego. What's stopping you?
My wife.
That's a completely different set of circumstances right there, isn't it?
One thing we talked about last week was the Marvel distribution news, which was switching over to Penguin Random House. Diamond had released a statement that said they were still going to continue working with Marvel as well, so it doesn't seem to be an exclusive thing. But you've got DC made the move, you got Marvel making the move. I think Hassan alluded to that there are some speculating this is a bad thing. Not that that's not his opinion, but he had speculated that was being talked about.
It's the death knell of comic books in general.
And then I read other things that said, what Penguin Random House is going to do is actually invest in the comic book stores using the indie bookstore model. So it could be a good thing. What's your take, or at least your safe take?
My honest take, because honestly, I think it's a good move. I don't think it hurts the comic shops. Marvel does enough variant covers that if you want a certain book, you're not going to be able to get it at any place where Penguin's going to put it. You're going to have to go to the comic book shop, and they're going to work hand in hand together. It's kind of how I see it. And if we're making more comics or printing more comics, and by more I mean if we do an issue and it prints 3 times what it's printing now, that means more people are reading it. If the distribution's better, which is good for the industry. It means less layoffs as far as publishers wanting to chop their books or whatever. It's just good in general. If it's a business move, and I think it has to be. In the past, as you guys know, comic companies, they would have opportunities to distribute their books in other ways, whether it be digitally or through Walmart or whatever. But there was always an exclusivity with Diamond that if you broke that, then they could cease publishing your books. So smaller publishers wouldn't dare do it. Even the bigger ones wouldn't want to rock the boat, So but now they have to, and I think Diamond understands that. And as long as they're all in it together, I think it can benefit the comic shops. Because who wants to, go down out of business with an exclusive deal in your back pocket? Wouldn't you rather stay in business and sell your variant versions, your direct market versions? That'll probably be worth more in the long run than what you might get on the newsstand or at a bookstore. To me, I think comic shops still have a lot to give, and it's good for everybody. That's my honest take.
I like it. Well, we appreciate you stepping up. Last minute, a late call up.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hopefully Hassan will be.
I honestly thought about just not showing up at all, just so we weren't wasting Darren's time. If I show up, he's going to be like, "The hell am I doing here?"
I enjoy it so much more when you're here, Hassan. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Or well enough, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's all uphill from here.
That is our show for tonight. Next week, the finale of
our show. We're
Falcon
done.
And Winter Soldier.
Oh.
Well, yes, it's now going to be the Darren and Mike show next week. It's the finale for Hassan.
That was always coming, though. I knew.
Yes,
I could predict it.
We will be, we'll be talking about the penultimate episode, and we'll be looking ahead to the finale of Falcon and Winter Soldier. We will also talk a little bit more Army of the Dead. New trailer dropped, and we'll be looking ahead to May the 4th as well. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Rogue Wave.